to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Taya master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so that was a very strange playing. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but welcome to the show. Glad to have you all with us today. And Anne-Marie, we stole your weather. I just thought we should let you know that because we're experiencing all the rain.
We've had a heat wave. I mean, it has gone a bit chillier now, but we've had a heat wave. We've had sunshine. We've had summer clothes. It's been amazing.
Well, now you know where it all went. It came here.
Yeah. Keep it.
We
will.
Well, we're joined today by Dominika Stanjevic, and I hope I didn't screw that up too badly, but got thumbs up. Oh, hey, all right, I'll take a thumbs up. But Dominika is the author of a book called The Magic of Dreaming Big, subtitled Acting Small and
Achieving Success.
Achieving Success, right, okay. And this is going to be an interesting topic, among other reasons, because she likes to combine psychology with biology. And that's not a combination we normally make, is it? I mean, we don't really put those things together. And yet they are obviously related. I mean, you're not going to have much psychology without the biology. So I'm not sure why we leave that out. Dominika, why do we leave that out? Why do we kind of skip that part?
Because we're so excited about the spiritual and the unknown. And when, psychology was growing and developing, we did not have the tools from neuroscience that were able to connect our thoughts into biology, which is our brain. Just lately, in the last 10, 15 years, neuroscience has exploded, and neurobiology, neuroscience, neuropsychology started developing because we've learned that it's not us who creates our personalities. And it's not untangible. It's literally your brain that creates that. And it's so fascinating because it's an organ, which means it's biology. So, like when people say, oh, meditate when you're upset. Yeah, good luck with that. Okay, that's not happening. Nobody's meditating when they're upset. Why? Because their brain is so busy. It's so busy with being upset. The only way to hack that is with biology. For example, biting on something super, super sour. What happens is there's a signal going to that brain, and the brain goes, something is happening. I need to pay attention to what's happening down there. And then the thought stops. And that's where
we distract the brain. It's smoke and mirrors. That's what it is.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So it is. We've missed that connection. I mean, we knew it, but it wasn't so scientifically proven. Now we have so much science behind it. We can literally influence what hormones our brain produces, what neurotransmitters we're producing in our gut, what brain waves there is a book, very advanced. It was challenging even for me to read. If you're super smart, you'll read it in one time. I wasn't. I needed 3 times. It's called Math. Okay. And they have found with science that with your heart, you can connect to your brain waves and you can control them. And your heart is responding to how you breathe. Again, it's biology, right? Mm-hmm. And how you breathe slows down your heart, and your heart sends different signal to your brain. That changes your brain wave and you calm down. So you literally, the stress is reduced by biology, not by psychology.
Which actually helps to explain meditation, which you mentioned a moment ago, because when you're focused on meditation, you're focused in the heart region. And now all of a sudden you're producing these wonderful biological results. I
know. And you know what the funny thing is? That we always thought, I have feelings. Well, feelings are nothing else than just chemicals that your brain. Remember Bones? Did you watch Bones?
Oh, I love that program.
Okay, this is all true. Like, her scientific approach was so scientific that people were going, oh my God, this is so hard. But it's not. Your thoughts are literally the result of your brain going, I'm going to connect this chemical and I'm going to take this chemical and I'm going to take these two together. And that's how I'm going to make you feel. I'm going to flush your body with them. And then you're going to be anxious, angry, in love. And then I'm going to shut off, for example, your prefrontal cortex, where you plan things, when you analyze things, when you have forethought, when you're controlling yourself. And I'm going to see how it works. It doesn't. That's where you go in your fight or flight and you go absolutely insane and you have anxiety and all those other things. But again, it's produced by your brain, by the wiring that was created not by you, But by everything that your brain just took in, had no clue what it was, and went, oh, that makes sense. I'm just going to connect this. It didn't make sense. That's why you are the way you are. And a lot of times, including me, we act totally irrationally. I mean, you like my color purple, right? Very pretty color, right? Right. It doesn't exist. There's no color purple. There's no wavelength in the color spectrum for color purple. It is between green and blue. And brain doesn't know what to do with it. So it said, you will see purple. And then we discussed the colors and variations of something that really doesn't exist in biology. And it doesn't exist in physics. But we're all hands and arms about color purple if it matches. Hello. Welcome to this brain.
Well, at least you're beginning to make some sense for me out of why they used to do cathode ray tubes with RGB. Red, green, and blue dots. I mean, that starts to make some sense now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's actually apparently some science behind it too.
Yes. And guess what? The brain, this organ, this biology tricked the freaking 8 million people who believe that there's color purple. The only people who are not tricked are people who are colorblind. They don't see purple.
That kind of makes sense because they don't see green or red either. So, I mean, they're kind of like missing.
They're missing, but on the other hand, they're not discussing something that is totally unrealistic and it doesn't exist.
Well, what you've basically done is you've taken something that I already knew was impossible to describe and made it even more impossible because, describe the color red. I can't do it. How what is red? Red is red. Now you're saying not only can I not describe red, but purple doesn't even exist.
Mm-hmm.
So
that is exactly what I'm saying. And any physicist will confirm that, if you look at wavelengths for every color, there's a wavelength. This one doesn't have any because it's just not a thing. But our brain made it a thing because it needed to make sense.
There's an interesting piece to that too, because purple, it's interesting you chose the color purple there. Purple is the color that is usually associated with royalty. So what we're really saying is that either royalty doesn't exist or the emperor has no clothes. I'm not sure which.
I so agree with you. And I just saw my camera went off. So I'm very black, and that color, actually doesn't exist either. It's just lack of light.
Well, you're just trying to convince us that the purple really doesn't exist.
Okay, it doesn't want to come on. So we're going to take off this camera and we're going to try this one.
Yeah, we've got you now.
And the purple that doesn't exist is now back.
Okay, it's not going to be as good, but it's going to be working.
That's all right.
That's okay. So our brain basically is a biological organ, and that organ has different functions, and we know a lot, but not everything about it. But one of the cool things that we've learned, besides the fact that color purple doesn't exist, is that nobody on this earth sees the color the same way.
I've often wondered about that, actually.
Yeah, I've wondered about that one too.
You do? Yeah.
Yeah.
And if that is the truth, and according to science it is, because we have different receptors, then guess what? Nobody has the same reality.
Well, we already knew that.
Well, we didn't know scientifically. We just said.
Well, I knew. I'll speak for myself. I already knew that.
Okay, then you were smart. Well, most people don't know that.
It's not difficult. I mean, we were talking about certain political people before we got started here.
You were?
I don't live in the same universe they live in. So yeah, I know for a fact.
Yeah,
I know for a fact it's a different world.
The perceptions are different. Yes, absolutely. The perceptions and the values and a lot of other things are different. I think, the approach from Dr. Daniel Amen, who trained me, who is a double board certified neuropsychiatrist, some stuff from Dr. Huberman, a lot of stuff from Joseph McClendon III, from the Neuro-Encoding Institute, and also understanding biology, where you look at blood work and you realize that maybe your feeling of anxiety is not a feeling of anxiety triggered by and created by the outside, but maybe you're just don't have enough of building blocks for your brain to suppress the anxiety. I think it's quite amazing what we're learning because it changes coaching. It changes coaching for the good for the client, not so good for the coaches. Because if you're using neuroscience, then your clients are gone within 6 months to a year. They just don't need you.
Okay.
Because changes in the brain are permanent. And the rewiring happens permanently. It's not only a thought process anymore. You literally practice, rehearse certain feelings. So when they come up, you can catch them and substitute them with something else. And there are so many amazing things. And, you know, I remember in Europe, we used to laugh at NLP. Well, it turns out that this is a tiny fraction of neuroscience, and it actually works. There's science behind it, because every word has a chemical attachment and makes you feel something. If you're happy, you feel different than when you're excited, and you feel different when you're ecstatic. The feelings and the chemicals connected to those words are different.
So here's a question for you along that same line. Do we all experience the same words the same way? In other words, are we all using the same chemicals?
Nope. Hate, like when kids say, "Oh, I hate you," has a very different connotation and emotional charge and the chemical release than a person who's about to kill you. Like those are not the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we've learned is that when I do exercises with my classes, or when I do public speaking, when I do workshops, or when I coach my clients, I go, okay, give me a definition of happy. And if I have 50 people in the room and I would ask 50, 90% have a different definition.
Sure.
So when we talk, I want to be happy, that's why coaches, and we should also ask, what is that to you?
Yeah.
Because I have no clue. My happy might not be your happy. And that is the misconception that we speak the same language. We don't. And if you're like a foreigner like me, there are very different things attached also to meaning. Like meaning I love you in English will have a different meaning than in Polish when I say it. I will feel different things. Why? Because in English, we use it over and over. In Polish, we say I love you only to a specific person. It has the highest value, and it's not used everywhere. Here in America, we go, "Oh, I love you. Oh, you're so amazing. I love you too. Love you, girl. Bye." The value of that and the emotional charge is very different than in a different language. Yet in this one, we mean I like you, you're great. And this one means, you know, my heart, my emotions, my brain is absolutely crazy. My prefrontal cortex went walking, science of love. My basal ganglia, anterior cingulate, and all the other things are going crazy, but I have no prefrontal cortex. So I'm going to believe everything you say and, you know, follow you till death do us part, or, you know, whatever else happens and all along the way.
I like the way you
get is quicker than the death. Just one second.
Is any of this ringing true with you, Anne-Marie? I'm just kind of curious.
Well, yes, it does. It makes perfect sense in the fact that we're all wired differently, and we all have different perceptions and stuff, and we've all had our own triggers. So our words are going to mean something different. They're going to be familiar to other people, but what you align to that word absolutely makes sense that it would be different for each person. To me,
I find it a really fascinating idea to think about how we have these different chemicals associated with different words, because it aligns very nicely with a practice that I do, and I'm sure many other people do as well. You know, you're having a conversation with somebody, and they tell you, "Well, I'm feeling X," fill in the blank with whatever the X is, and you say, "Well, tell me about it." Why do you say that? Because you want to find out what they actually meant by it. Because, like you're saying, Dominika, I mean, it could be 15 different things.
It usually is, and you're like, "Oh, really? Oh, okay." I am very often surprised by my clients, and when I ask them, "What do you mean by it? Like, how does it look like for you?" It's not only a coaching question, now it's a life question, especially if I want to connect with you, if I want to understand. And you know what happens the most? They usually go, "Well, I actually don't know."
Oh, yes.
That's what I was just about to ask. Is it's really hard. If you ask that question, it's trying to put that into words can be quite difficult.
And it is, because most people never been asked that question. And I had this really interesting experience with one of the school districts with at-risk youth here in Houston. And at one point, they decided that they don't need mental health and self-regulation, coaching, training, and education. They need to learn how to do business.
Okay.
And I was like, I wonder how that business is going to go if you cannot control yourself and you don't know where your feelings come from and you don't know how to put yourself in a better light. And you don't know that, being upset, being angry, being anxious, all of those are good. They're not bad. They're information that something is happening. The challenge is, do you stay and you kind of live in it? Or do you accept it, look it, feel it, and you don't suppress it, but you let it pass through? And I was at a menopause conference, and that's a whole different thing just a few days ago. Ladies, perimenopause and menopause is literally connected to your brain as much as day and night. You cannot have a healthy brain if you're in perimenopause and you don't get coaching and training and help with your brain, because your brain is very sensitive to those hormones that are doing whatever the hell they want. Now, imagine me, a grown woman, almost 50. I see a squirrel. The squirrel is jumping on the tree and it's so happy and it's freaking alive. And I go, it's a live squirrel and it's fine. Okay, that's perimenopause for you, okay?
Anne-Marie's laughing, so I think she's getting into the agreement mode there.
It was a roller coaster, menopause. It really was. Oh my gosh. And you're so right. There's like nothing can control those emotions.
No. And so brain health is super important, and brain health is part of what we do, because if your brain is healthy, it will process that differently. You will have more control, but you need to start as young as you can. And that is the challenge. And when you're leading people and you're a manager, if you cannot control your brain, your own body, what the heck can you control?
Good question.
Well, there is one thing that you can control. That is what you choose. The question is, how informed is your choice?
That's one. And two, is it really your choice, or you just go with the flow?
Well, that's a choice.
Well, no, that is avoiding choice, actually. Going with the flow is making, I'll take whatever is coming, because if I choose, then I'm responsible for the choice.
Well, that's the way we deceive ourselves into it. We still made the choice to go with the flow. We just talked ourselves out of thinking it was a choice.
Okay, we can play. I truly am not the biggest fan of going with the flow.
Yeah, well, not lots of good things happen when you just go with the flow. If the flow is going in a direction you don't want it to go, which is the way it normally is with most people.
Yes, and it usually has nothing to do with your decision-making skills with whatever you do. And I absolutely love when I talk to people, and there's like my favorite ones. I'm going to give you that little tip. If I would tell you, can you make yourself feel worse? Can you? Like if you think about past events, things that were sad, can you make yourself feel worse, like in seconds?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Great. Fantastic. Now, now imagine you want to feel ecstatic and amazing. How quickly that happens? How many
with
events
practice or without practice?
So we have these buckets of memories that we always go to, and that neural pathway is very short. You want to feel bad? Just remember when you messed up here and when you didn't show up here and you didn't do something, blah, 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 blah. We're great at it. We've practiced our whole life. Now, do you have a bucket for joy where you want to make yourself feel better? Do those memories come easily, or does it go, so let me see, something good about me, something that was great.
That's the way it starts. Yeah.
Yeah. Create buckets of joy. Create and go back to those memories as often as you can. So they're just on a short leash, like those that, make us feel like not so great.
And that's actually a learned skill. I mean, what you're describing, it's a wonderful one, but it's a skill that you really can learn. And I remember when I first was presented with the idea that I could learn it, I really didn't believe it. I was kind of in that category you were talking about a moment ago, where you just kind of went, go with the flow. And somebody once presented the idea to me that the flow could actually be a good flow if I just made some different choices about, what I was going to pay attention to and what I was going to. Was I going to do a joy bucket? Was I going to do a sadness bucket? What was I going to do? It was up to me. And I said, no way.
You know what? You can choose if you're flowing on a log, or you're flowing on a raft, or you're flowing on a very comfortable luxury ship with service. I'll take the luxury ship with service. And I
like that one. Yeah, that's good.
Yes, I like that one.
Sign us both up for the cruise. We like that.
Absolutely.
But what you're describing, though, is very important, because it really is how we can take control of our lives, particularly when our lives feel like they're so far out of control.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And our brain did everything for us. And the moment you realize you can control what it does, and you can, and unless you don't have half of the brain, then probably I can't help you. That's the purpose that I'm not as skilled. But if you do have your whole brain, for example, did you know that Dr. Amen did a study on 250,000 brains? Okay, 250,000. That's a lot of brains to look at. And all of them were diagnosed with the same thing, depression. And when they looked at scans, it turned out that there are 7 different types of depression, which they didn't know. They're in different parts of your brain, which they didn't know. And some of the depression is connected to overactive parts of your brain, not underactive like they expected. So if everybody gets the same type, I know.
Why? No, I'm surprised that they expect you to be
UCLA Amen depression study. UCLA Dr. Amen depression study, PubMed. Fascinating, because it's an isolated study because nobody took that many brains. But if you take that many brains, and it turns out there are 7 types of depression, and we all get the same medication for it. Now, that's not even the end of this funny thing. It turns out that saffron is more effective than antidepressants. It turns out that in a few countries in Europe, walking in a forest with specific breathing is prescribed for depression, and over a year period of time is more effective than Prozac and any other SSRI.
Sure.
This is all biology. This is not psychology. This is hacking your brain with biology.
Well, I mean, you're talking to people who have kind of lost faith in medicine anyway. So,
I love medicine.
We're already on board with that, but
I love medicine. I think medicine is great and it's necessary. And, I'm epileptic. So because of Dr. Amen, I haven't had a seizure in 8 years. I healed my brain. From 2,000 units of medication, I'm down on 250, which is amazing. After 35 years, I'm off antidepressants, and I've been only on saffron and GABA and some other things that are cocktail mix for me because my brain needs it. Basically, it doesn't produce enough of it on its own. The truth is, medication is important. Sometimes if you're losing a job, like I work with people with ADHD, and you're about to get kicked out of school, you're about to lose another job, brain coaching will come later. First, the brain needs to be stabilized. So the interventional medicine, I mean, come on. The truth is, if this was only thing we humans needed, we would have not died at age of 40, 300 years ago. We would have been alive till 80, 90. Our lifespan extended because of medicine, because of knowledge. So, but there's this magical medium. Don't go straight to pills, but don't think you can cure cancer with drinking juices. That might not happen. And I have a few friends who decided to try, and unfortunately, they're not with me anymore. And although we're talking about happiness and joy, that is created by you. It's not created by anybody outside. It's not dependent on people outside. It's dependent on you. And making smart choices, informed choices, and doing everything that suits you, but also listening to the experts. I mean, we wouldn't know that there are 7 types of depression if we wouldn't scan the brain. That's medicine. I have no way of scanning your brain.
I'm not sure that my MD actually even knows that. So I'm not sure I'm quite ready to put
Probably not. I go to my doctors with research, and I'm like, here, I would like you to help me. This is the research based on what I would like you to help me. I train MDs and nurse practitioners on brain health. And
I've tried that, but I can't collect the fee for some reason. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. They still want to collect the fee from me.
Well, that's okay. Imagine you're helping other people. They're smarter, and then they treat people differently. So you're helping masses with educating your doctors. And don't get me wrong, there's no way a doctor can know everything about you. There isn't.
Sure. There's
so many body parts, so many things working together. They need to specialize. So, as I said, hysteria, that used to be, if you guys never checked out Hysteria Story, which was women in perimenopause, you got to. I don't know how spicy I can be, but this is phenomenal. So women that lived actually through menopause 200 years ago, male doctors decided that the best way to relieve their tension, because they thought this was a tension of a nervous uterus. Okay, our uterus would get nervous. Yes. And they also thought that uteruses jump out at high speeds when we drive cars. So that's why we couldn't drive cars. But that's a different story, okay? So
What?
Read the history of medicine. It is insane what people thought. So
And you wonder why I have a downer on medicine, but we'll leave that one.
well, this is a long time ago. Okay, they know now that our uteruses don't jump out at high speed. So we're good. We make progress. So women would go to the doctor's office, and the doctors would create, with their hands, an orgasm for a woman internally. So at one point, they were overwhelmed with number of women that were experiencing hysteria. It was a very common practice that they've created, but it didn't work out the way they thought. So then later on, they decided that those women are crazy. And at least in Eastern Europe, we had special hospitals for any woman who was experiencing menopause, and they would be locked in and stay there for 10, 15 years, because menopause, it's not 2 months, it's not 2 weeks, it's years. So with that being said, I think it's amazing what progress we've made, that we can scan brains, and we believe uteruses don't jump out.
Glad to hear that.
And we don't believe any other things, I mean, me, epileptic, in 1400s, I would have been either drowned or burned on a stake, because epilepsy was assumed that devil came in and overtook your body, right? So they would have exorcism, and I was either a witch or possessed by the devil at that time. So you know what? We're making lists right now of people with certain illnesses in this country. Maybe we're going that way, but I'm going to leave that for later. So yeah, they would either drown me, and if I would survive, then they would drown me again, because it was proof I was a witch. And if I would drown, they would go, "Oh my God, she wasn't a witch. That's so bad. We're so sorry." But it's for the good of the all, right? So people always try to make sense of what's happening to humans. If you look at history of medicine, for example, the sirens that we have in stories, that is a real disorder where a kid is born with 2 legs not separated. And now we separate that surgically. But when their 2 legs are, their skin combining both legs, it looks like a fishtail. That's where the sirens came from. So science is fascinating and amazing. I can talk about this all the time, because I write fantasy books as well using medicine. So I check, the myths and where it came from and how is it really, and, what people created.
That actually sounds like a future book that you're probably going to be putting out. The concept.
It's already out.
It is out. Okay.
Yeah, I have like 6 books out, but some of them are in Polish, some of them are in English.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So there are like plenty of those. Anyway.
Okay.
So I'm just thinking about a menopausal mermaid now. That should be the
So yeah, that's and we as humans are trying to understand everything. It's impossible to understand. At one point, we have to trust. We have to trust a therapist, a psychiatrist, a brain coach like me, or somebody else that has the knowledge and the practice. And one thing I would say, anytime you get a person you talk to, if they say that's the best way, only way, it works for everybody, run.
Yeah, that's usually a bad sign.
Yes, run, because nothing works for everybody. There isn't, even death, we come back from death. I did. So, that didn't keep me there. I was there only for 3 minutes. It was pretty cool, actually, being dead. Not that I want to die, but it was pretty cool and a very different experience.
Okay. Yeah. We've talked about NDEs quite a bit, so you're not shocking us or anything.
Well, I don't know if you ever had a near death. I was literally dead for 3 minutes, and it was the most interesting thing, because I couldn't have known the things that I've experienced at that age. There was no way I could have known that. And when I was about 35, I had this epiphany. Oh my God, this is what I saw. So, and there was no tunnel, no angels flying and playing, and
no. That's different from, because I've interviewed quite a few people who have had them, and there are similarities, but there are also a lot of differences in the stories that they report.
I think I haven't heard anybody who had the same experience as mine so far.
Okay.
Mine was that when I died, I did hang over. I'm like, oh, I'm dead. How cool, right? It was the first thought, and then I became this yarn of energy. And it was glowing. And it was fast. It was great. It was like a great feeling of being this yarn with strings of energy all wrapped up. And then it took me up, and my yarns shoot out, and I had connection to all those different yards and balls of energy. And we were communicating in billions of languages. It wasn't only us humans. It wasn't only this galaxy. You understood so many things, and you had like an aha moment after an aha moment after aha moment. And then you could see, but there were no eyes, right? You could see with the feeling, right? With the perception, or I don't know. There's no word for that, I know.
Yeah.
And there were some people connected to that net of yarns and ball of yarns down here, but there were like 3, 4. So it is possible that some people talk to the higher power, but it's not freaking lady on a corner telling that she's connecting to your grandparents, most likely. And it was like, oh, that's why it works. And you understood that this is not the end. This is just the transition phase. And that ball of yarn of energy will end up in a different realm, galaxy. We're definitely not alone, according to my experience. Definitely. There are other beings, whatever they are, that are smart and wise and live out there. But I don't run around telling people that because they freak out because they believe that there's a garden and, then there is a God that sits there on a throne and you're going to have a beautiful life. But it's fascinating. And then I came back and I was back alive in my body and it really hurt. That was no fun. I'm not planning to die. I have some things to do. But it is an amazing experience.
Yeah.
It's a very calming, belonging feeling of, I get it. It was fast. And I was 19.
That's one commonality. People who have the ND experiences, the near-death experiences, they almost to a person are changed for the better as a result, and feel much more confident about themselves, about their connection to the rest of life, the universe, and everything, to God, however they want to express it. That commonality, I don't think I've ever heard anyone who doesn't express that after an NDE.
Yeah.
And also how everything is connected.
Yes.
We're all just energy, and that whole connection thing is just
And then when you read about the common consciousness, that fits right in.
Sure. Yeah.
I was like, and I read that when I was 35 and I died when I was 19. So when I was 19, nobody heard about common consciousness. Like I didn't know what it was. But yeah, I don't implement that part in my brain coaching. I stick to science.
Understandable, yeah. Although it's becoming more and more accepted, but yeah, it's quite understandable because there are a lot of people who still resist it, for sure.
You know what? We resist science too. We resist a lot of things, but I truly believe that sometimes when we can understand, it is easier to confirm to different behaviors, different thoughts and actions. And wherever you go in the world, and I have clients in 6 continents. So far, only penguins did not hire me. And I'm working on that.
In time,
In time, yes. I'm sure we'll find a way to connect. I mean, we already have trees singing songs with different vibrations. So probably one day we'll understand penguins as well. And they might need brain coaching. And training, neuroscience based. So I find that everybody's looking for one thing. I don't care what's the first thing you say. Underneath is to be happy.
Okay.
We all want to be happy. And happiness means different things. But at the end of the day, feeling of lightness, of enjoyment, of joy, of sparkle, of excitement is what everybody's looking for. And I don't care if you're from Africa and you're my client, or you CEO of a big company, you're my client.
Well, you're not
layers to get there, but at the end, we end up in the same place always.
You're not preaching to people who are against that, because I mean the subtitle of the show is Your Daily Dose of Happy, so you're in the right place.
Oh, thank you, because I thought I was talking for an hour absolutely to the wrong crowd.
Well, actually, we're talking to the right crowd that's receptive to the message.
And celebrate. Oh, I forgot to say celebrate. Not the outcome, but the process.
Yes.
Because outcomes are coming either way. But
well, you can sometimes celebrate outcomes. I mean,
no, actually, you shouldn't, because if you do too much, you become much more reinforced dopamine release, and you become dopamine addicted, and that leads to very low lows. And it is for people who are A-type personality, we retrain celebration, and we actually don't allow them to celebrate present successes. We teach them to remember past successes because they have less emotional charge and different pathways get engaged. And we say, I'll celebrate that. For some people, you're not allowed to literally celebrate the outcomes. You need to celebrate the past successes.
Well,
or
what happens if you
third
do?
or fourth.
What happens if you do celebrate a current success rather than a past success?
So depends on the person that you are. If you are so what happens is, if we're celebrating current success, we are constantly looking for the outcome that's in the future. So we miss daily joy. And we forget that the journey itself is what is the longest part. Success, and any study that you read from psychology and neuropsychology as well, when they scan your brains, is that when you get a raise, you're happy for 3 days and it's gone. But imagine you'd be celebrating every little thing you did, not knowing if you're getting a raise, but you did it anyway. Then the joy spreads over a long period of time, and that's just a cherry on top. Now, people with A-type personality with very strong dopamine addiction, those are people pleasers, those are high achievers. At one point, because they celebrate success, there is like nothing worth noticing. Burnout comes, and they go, yes, we won the contract, and then, okay, we got to work. So they miss another 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, a year from their life, working towards something that we don't know if they're going to achieve. And there's no enjoyment in life. That comes with burnout. Kate Spade was one of those examples. Phenomenal success, always working towards the goal, but missing the daily. And what happens is that when you're addicted to dopamine, it's connected to lecithin. And that is the same hormone women feel when they're in postpartum depression. The crash from high dopamine, the more dopamine, the higher the crash. That's where the suicides come in. So lowering the release and the chase, because dopamine is the chase, not the happiness. Dopamine makes you chase. Happiness particle and chemical is your serotonin. That allows you to go, oh, I'm so happy, I'm blissful, life is great. If you have too much serotonin, then you're usually a bum also, because you're just, oh, life is great, I don't need to do anything, look at me, right? That's not a good thing either. The balance is good. You need some cortisol, you need adrenaline, you need all of those to function properly. But if you're a gambler, if you're addicted, if you're A-type personality, if you're a high achiever, very often we reteach the brain and reteach the stimuli not to be. So we transfer it out. So it's not as high release. There's a really cool study that's not that new. It's 1989. That teaches you, if you have a high craving, so high dopamine and chase, and you really want something, 15 minutes of Tetris reduces significantly that craving for any type of addiction. Tetris, from all the freaking games. Tetris. Why? Because you engage your prefrontal cortex. You need to analyze what's coming, where it's going, and you're engaging the part that's shut down when you're in a craving mode. I combine so many things in this. This is so like brain science is so cool because it can be so practical and helpful to people.
Well, it's also interesting, like just right now you drew a connection between the prefrontal cortex and happiness, which is not that's kind of an atypical connection for people to draw, but it makes sense because, well, I mean, that's where most of us live. I mean, that's where our experiences are going on. So it first of all, it's reinforcing that, great, we can actually be happy in our life because that's where it all, that's the seed of it right there. So that's the good news. And that also kind of suggests that, well, since it's all right there, it's within reach. Anybody can reach it.
Absolutely.
If you're not feeling it, that doesn't mean that you can't get there. It just means you're not there right now.
Yet. Not there yet.
Yeah.
Another, little trick for being happy is dancing. It involves
I know a little bit about that, yeah.
Your cerebellum, your prefrontal cortex, and especially learning how to dance, because your brain has to start controlling everything, and there is no stress particle. So movement, if you're about to study, you want to memorize more, it helps your memory. Dance for 15 minutes like no one saw you dancing, and then sit down and study. You will memorize about 30% more.
It makes total. I'm a dancer. I'm a social dancer, and swing, hustle, ballroom, all that kind of stuff. And even when you're studying by going to a class, I mean, I go to classes on dances that I know like the back of my hand because I
Right.
like being in class.
Yeah. And that's your craving of your mirror neurons, mister.
Okay.
And your neurons want to experience other people. And funny enough, I was very sad to learn that we don't help people because we're good. We help people to stop our own pain. And that sucks. So mirror neurons, when you see somebody in pain, your brain experiences that pain. And the reason is because of mirror neurons, and it tells you this is bad, this needs to stop. So you help them so they're not in pain, so you don't feel their pain.
So do empaths have more of that?
Yes. And there's suffering. And there's even, now I'm not a psychiatrist, but there is a disorder that mirror neurons are so overactive that when you hit somebody, they feel it and they'll get a bruise. And they have never been hit. It can be that extreme. And that takes a lot of reprocessing, retraining of the brain. It's doable, numbing the brain, because it is insane for those people to live. A lot of twins have that. Like, they can sense things. And, when one twin is suffering, the other one is suffering as well. They've been doing, unfortunately, studies on twins since forever, plus Auschwitz, where twins were taken, right, and experimented on. But mirror neurons are not very well known yet, but we know that they're responsible for you feeling somebody's pain. And the more of them you have, and the less pruning your brain did, which is getting rid of those connections when you're young, the more of an empath you are. And for some empath, it is horrible to live. Now, not everybody who says they feel your pain and they're sad with you, it's actually because they're empaths. Sometimes they're just not. That's another story that we can talk about, why things they do.
Okay. Did that answer your question about empaths, so Anne-Marie?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Are you an empath?
Yes.
That can be reprogrammed and retrained. It takes a while.
Yeah, not so much as I used to be. I think I've done a lot of work on my brain, and it's certainly not as bad as, no, I say not as bad. It's a good thing, but it's also not a pleasurable thing, and it's under control a lot more now. Good,
because I can imagine only how much you're suffering, because empaths don't have this let's say us regular humans, we have that empathy towards kids, husband, like the closest family when they're proximities. But empaths have it with everybody. Now imagine if you go to a place where people are crying because something is that's unbearable.
Yeah. When you're watching adverts on telly and there's, children in different countries and they're trying to get you to donate money, and it's just like, I could just give you everything.
And marketing knew that. They didn't know it was mirror neurons, but they basically prey on you.
Yeah.
Because people like this are very prone to giving to stop the pain of them, so they don't feel their pain.
Mm-hmm.
So are you saying that mirror neurons, the only purpose of mirror neurons is to feel the pain?
To feel what the environment is. That's the main purpose, to receive the environment and tell the brain. So when you're a kid, you have loads of those. And they did really cool experiment with moms. And one mom of like a barely walking kid, when the kid fell down, was instructed to go, "Oh, great, fantastic, let's go, come on," right? And ignore it with a big smile on her face. And the other mom and they had a few hundred kids, so it was a big study. And the other mom was instructed to go, "Oh my God, you hurt yourself. Are you okay? Are you going to be okay? Are you going to cry? Don't cry, please, please don't cry." So every kid, literally every kid, where moms reacted, "Oh, great, fantastic, you fell, let's go, keep going," would go, and went nothing. Every kid of a mom who went, "Oh my God, are you okay? Are you going to hurt? Are you going to cry?" They would go, because the mirror neurons receive that there is a danger. They're supposed to be scared. And that's how we program our kids, not knowing we're doing this. That's how environment does it. Mirror neurons teaches your brain what's good, what's bad, and how to react. So whatever you're surrounded with, and again, you have no influence as a child on it. And parents didn't know that. I mean, most parents don't know that right now. So they react the way they used to react. But to control your reactions, you need to know who you are and control yourself before you start controlling what you do to our kids, right? So it's like a whole chain of reaction. And then you have, kids that are afraid of everything. I used to be afraid of darkness, very much so, because my grandma, since I was a little kid, would tell me that if I don't walk where there's light, I'm going to get killed or raped. And she did it out of love, but her face and everything was so terrifying that when I would see the street with no lights, I would go, I'm not going there. I'm going to take a long way around. Now, you could say that's a smart thing, but it's not. Because it's not like you're going to get raped every 5 minutes and every dark alley is a danger, right? It's like, imagine parents go, oh my God, in America, right, where we have shooting, don't go, school shootings, you got to be careful, make sure nobody has a gun. And if we would repeat that to our kids in America, no kid would go to school. They wouldn't, because the fear would be so paralyzing.
True. Yeah. Of course, the flip side with mirror neurons is that because they're really neutral, they don't really care whether or not you're dealing with something negative or positive. So we can also use them with positive influences as well.
Yes. But we need to understand how they work so we can use them, right? So if you can reinforce with joy and happiness and finding way out, and your face is read by the babies nonstop, and then brain learns how to react to things. There's another study, because boys' brains are different than girls' brains, and they did a study on newborns, 4 or 5 months old, when they already can see. And the truth is, those kids don't know if they're a boy or girl at that time. I don't care what you tell me. They have no concept of social construct of a gender, if you're a boy or girl. And they would show boys and girls faces of people, and they would talk to them, and they would observe eye movement and concentration where, and then they would show them little blocks, cars, and color. Girls spend 40% more time on reading the faces than the boys. The boys got bored and would go to blocks and things that are constructed. Why? Because boys' brains are different than girls. We have the same structures, but the sizes of different parts of our brain, numbers of connections are different. That's why we are different, beautifully different. It's not better, not worse, but it is different. That's why ladies have intuition. That's part of that process. We have 3 structures that are way bigger than in men that allow us to feel things without understanding why are we feeling it. And that gut feeling, listen to it. If you're not stressed and if you're not in danger, listen to your gut feeling. It's always right. And it's accessing deeper memories and things encoded in your brain. Men can train that, but they don't practice that usually at the beginning. So they're not as versatile. You can grow your different brain parts, right? White matter, gray matter, doing things you don't want to do and then celebrating that you did it anyway, although it didn't feel like it. That grows your brain, literally. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you're also describing for me why I, as a male, have had challenge trying to do the kinds of things you're talking about, trusting the gut, trusting the intuitions and so forth. And I've learned to do it to a significant degree, but yet now you're explaining to me that, okay, there actually is a biology behind why it was so challenging for me to do it.
Absolutely.
It continues to be.
And you can have a female brain in a male's body. That is possible.
Sure.
But in general population, most men just don't develop certain skills. And then we have, the culture and what it's being told to them, what's right, what's wrong. I mean, everything is stored in the brain. And the challenge is that unless we teach our kids and us adults how to control what goes in, what goes out, and if we teach how to control those chemical releases, how to grow different parts of your brain with practical, simple things, unless we teach that massively, we will be stuck in the same story. I just run into like a 1920 video where some dude was literally talking about what we're talking about, positive psychology and, setting your mind to something. And I'm like, it was already there. But we haven't moved forward. We still have studies that say only 10% of people are into personal development out of the whole world. 10%. Wow. That sucks. No wonder we're kind of, in our own circle. We need to go somewhere where people are not aware. And trust me, it's a very interesting experience. When you go to places where people are not aware of personal development, you tell them as you think, so you feel, as you feel, so you do, as you do, so you have. And you explain how the process works for the brain. They're like, oh my God. I know. It's I wish mental health, brain health would be a part of curriculum for a few years in every school, every place in the world. I do. Because we would have a different society everywhere in the world. People would be less stressed. People would be less angry. People would be happier. People would be more directed. They would have a choice, and they would understand that, for example, if out of the blue you have anger management issues, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's your left temporal lobe that got hit when you were a kid and it didn't have enough oxygen. And when it didn't have oxygen, it didn't function properly. And if it didn't function properly, you developed anger issues. And it's not you, it's your brain. And that is fixable. That is absolutely fixable. There's no reason why we cannot restore, unless, you cut it out, then we cannot restore it. But if we still have that part, we can still do something about it.
Which is encouraging, very encouraging. Yeah. I like the fact that the ideas that you're presenting here do present a great deal of human agency. In other words, the ability to take control of your own life, of your own situation. Because I do think that's an important component, an important piece of that happiness puzzle we were talking about before, which we can't define because we all have a different idea of what it is, but we use the same words, so that kind of helps a little bit. But it's good to know that we do have that ability, and I love the way that you're reinforcing that. So thank you for doing that. We have a few things that we like to do with every show, and we'd like to do them with you as well. First thing we should do, and this is probably like the most important thing of all. I mean, you're the author of the book, The Magic of Dreaming Big, Acting Small, and Achieving Success. Presumably that's available almost anywhere, I would think. I mean, usually they are, right? Okay, yep, nodding up and down, so that's a good thing. But we should probably also find out, like if somebody wants to maybe work with you or consider working with you or learn more about what you're doing or whatever, we should probably tell them how to find you, don't you think?
I don't know. I mean, we want people to be engaged and go through the hustle so they really appreciate when they find me. But fine, I'll tell you. There are two
thank you. We appreciate that so much.
You're very welcome. So there are two ways. Either you go by my first and last name, Dominika Staniewicz, or you can look me up anywhere from YouTube to any social media except TikTok. I don't do TikTok, at Your Brain Coach D. And that's the handle everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, or my first and last name, YouTube as well. And this is where I post in Polish, although I don't know if you're listening to this and then you probably speak English. So those are in English, but there's also one in Polish. It's called the neuro-coach D. And I started presenting my knowledge, because there's nobody who does that in Polish, to the Polish community, because I think everybody deserves the chance to use the knowledge. I sometimes laugh, like, if people would do what I tell them to in those videos, I would be out of a job. But thankfully, they don't.
That's one of those, it's good, but it's not so good situations.
But you don't have to worry. There's the other 90% of the planet that aren't even in the focus yet. You can still grab those.
Well, yes. I'm also curious. I mean, when you're presenting it in Polish to Polish speakers, how are they receiving it? How are they responding to it?
So far I had one client that I coached in Polish, and it was a huge challenge for me because I've learned that I have no vocabulary in Polish. I speak fluent Polish, but I've never learned brain structures, brain networks, biological terms, the specific ones for this type of work in Polish. So I literally had to sit down and create myself a dictionary and memorize words in Polish, because I speak it. But when you coach in English, I already have trigger words that I hear and I know which question I could ask. Yeah. In Polish, I don't have them because they're different. Grammatical structures are different, so it's not going to work the same. So after my coaching sessions in Polish, I was literally drenched in sweat. And I was like, yes! She loved it. She put a review on my Google My Business, which was a lovely review. And I'm super grateful. And I am excited because that means this knowledge can be transferred into any language and can help anybody.
Yeah, which makes total sense. I mean, we'd be surprised otherwise, but it's good to know. It's like reinforcement, right? That, it's the right track, especially for you, a fluent Polish speaker. My goodness, what an opportunity. That's fabulous.
I know.
Yeah, beautiful. Second thing we like to do at the end of every episode is I like to turn to my co-host, Anne-Marie, because not only is she a co-host, she's actually a former listener who became a co-host on the show. And so she has the listener's perspective on all this stuff. And she always ties it together like, this is likely, well, this is how this particular listener is tying it all together. I'm curious to see how you're going to tie it together today, Anne-Marie. So what are you thinking?
As always, there's just so many good things. But I just think, certainly in this current world, about perception. We watch a lot of social media, we look at colleagues, we look at friends, and we think everybody else has got it so much better. And actually that's just perception. They might not. So I just loved that whole just what does happy mean to you, all those things, and just asking yourself those questions. And then I think the nugget for me was grow your different brain parts. I love the fact that it's adaptable, and it's not a solid stone that you can't change. Grow your different brain, ask those questions, and just keep growing. Be that 10%.
Be that 10%, and influence others. So maybe it's going to go to 12% in a few years, and then 15, and then 20.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's exactly where it's going to go, because we're at 10% now. I think it's safe to say when I was young, we were probably at 1%.
You think so?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was that low, and it's just kind of taken off like wildfire. 10%. When you said only 10%, I thought to myself, what do you mean only? It's like, that's huge compared to where it used to be.
All about perspective.
It is. It's all perspective. It really is true. So yeah, but that to me is very exciting. And yeah, I think we will be seeing more and more larger chunks of the population taking on this kind of stuff.
So.
I'm excited about that. And with that being said, I told you about the challenge I'm going to do starting next week.
Yeah, tell us about the challenge. We haven't.
Okay, guys, it's going to be cool. It's going to be free, so that's a non-paid. You just need to sign up, and we're doing an overwhelm challenge. And it sounds weird, okay? I know, but imagine we get overwhelmed with things to do, with how horrible things will be, and we project all those visions. What if we would create an overwhelm challenge of joy, where we imagine things that are going to be so exceptional, great, that it overwhelms us with gratitude and excitement. And we create that bucket that we can then dip into. And we practice that for 10 days. That will literally rewire your brain. I guarantee you that the exercises we'll be doing for 10 days will change how you wake up, how you feel, what you notice, and what people you talk to, how you react to people, just by doing the overwhelm challenge, overwhelm of joy, gratitude, and happiness. And no, we're not going to be doing 3 things I'm grateful for. That's not how it's going to go. That's the mini version. We're going to do a challenge where you're going to be practicing vividly imagining being insanely happy with things that you cannot even imagine. And we're going to push you to do that.
Okay.
Love that.
That sounds like it's going to be a very dramatic. How long does this thing go?
It's going to be 10 days.
Not 10 days. All right. That's going to be a very dramatic 10-day period for sure. Yeah.
And I'm excited because I've done it on me, and I read some science on it. I'm like, okay, this is science-based. This is something that is going to literally, because your brain is 50% visual cortex. Like, it's visual 50%. If you start imagining what you're eating, you're going to start salivating. And your brain's like, oh, there's no food, but where's the saliva coming from? If you do it right, and we'll teach you how to do it right, you'll be able to create compelling visions of insane happiness that will become your pool. And imagine if you're in a place of insane happiness, how contagious that is. Happiness is contagious because of mirror neurons, and so is depression.
Okay. All right. The final thing that we like to do with each episode is something I started a few years ago, because we're now in the 21st century. And in the 21st century, we get to do things like do podcasts where you're in Houston and I'm in Connecticut and Anne-Marie's over in the UK, and we're all connected together, which is something we couldn't have done 30 years ago, which is pretty exciting. It's fun. It's interesting. It's fascinating. And along with that has come a new way of doing marketing, a new way of connecting to other people, where we're basically putting out content. We do this show. You came onto the show as a guest. I'm sure you're doing other appearances, and you You probably do. I don't know all the things that you do, but if you're like most people who come onto the show, there are a number of different ways that you're putting out this information because you want people to have the information.
Absolutely.
And that's where I noticed that there's a missing piece that we kind of skipped over during all this period. Missing piece is we're putting out all this information to people we've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see. And we don't know what happens, but they get benefit out of it and we never hear.
That is very true.
And I think to myself, we should do something about that. So Dominika, on the behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, who you've been helping in ways you don't even know about by putting out all this wonderful information, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
I was not expecting that. That's adorable. Thank you. And that is very important. So I had a few clients that reached out to me and they go, I've been watching you for 2 years. I'm like, who are you? They never commented. They never shared, never liked. And they go, I did this because you told me to. And I did this. I'm like looking at them going, they must have really listened, right? But I have no idea who they are. So, and the truth is I also sometimes scroll and I don't like, and I don't comment everything that I like.
Sure.
And that is, the sad part, that there's so much information out there that we need to be selective. So thank you. And thank you guys for what you're doing, because bringing joy and happiness and giving people little tiny things that they can just easily adapt and make their life more exciting, more enjoyable. It's changing the world and making it a better place. So thank you on behalf of those who get to share through your platform to your listeners.
Yeah, well, you make it so much easier. So thank you for that too. We appreciate that as well. Anne-Marie, as usual, I think we hit the top mark, and I think we hit that daily dose of happy we were trying to hit. Thank you for your participation and help. Yep, good stuff. Well done. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.